Hello, and welcome to the Know and Iron podcast. I'm your host, Lily Busby. This week, I am joined by James Robinson, founder of Craic magazine, a magazine which explores people, place, identity, and style in Northern Ireland through photography. In this episode, we will be talking about Craic magazine, what it does, and we will also be talking about the need for more positive photos to be taken in Northern Ireland. But firstly, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, yeah, nice to meet you. So my name's James, and I'm a photographer, image maker, and publisher, based in London. And a lot of my work sort of explores Northern Ireland, through image making. And a lot of my practice sort of explores identity, heritage, sportswear, and costume. And I do this through print magazines.
And what sort of inspired you to create your own magazine?
So I studied fashion image at uni in Bristol. And in my final year of university, I had to finish that through the pandemic and COVID. And at the time, Northern Ireland, there was a lot of sort of social and political issues that were happening. A lot, sort of like a resurgence of violence. I think that was sort of as a result of Brexit implications, and then at the same time, COVID. I think people felt quite fed up, and I think through seeing that in the media, especially like the way that Northern Ireland's portrayed, not only in our own country, but also in the UK and England, it was sort of showing sort of the bad sides of our country. So that's sort of why I wanted to start the magazine, to show like that there's more to Northern Ireland than just sort of the past.
And what sort of photos would you take?
So it would be sort of a mixture of documentary style photography, which would be sort of taking photos of people in Northern Ireland that sort of either I had met personally, or people that I'd found online, or sort of images that were kind of showing a playful side to Northern Ireland. So I would style the subjects in the image. For example, there's an image I took at the Giant's Causeway where I styled the outfit with sort of potato crisps attached to the guy's chest. Just sort of wanted to show that there's quite a fun side, and also like celebrate the cultural references that we have, such as potato crisps, and also the Giant's Causeway as a location.
And how did your followers react to the photo?
I think a mixture of people, like, a lot of my friends, and sort of people that I know in England, especially, were so like kind of, they didn't even know that that was a thing. They were anyone that I showed photos from the Giant's Causeway, or any of those images that I took in Belfast, they're kind of blown away by the location, and the sort of the sense of feeling they get from seeing those photos is something that really needs to be shown to people.
And how important are photos like these in telling Northern Ireland's story?
I think images are so important in telling a story. I think if you look at any image from the past, the troubles is like, even 30 years on, people can look at a photo and remember it. So I think in that sense, it's not sort of trying to rewrite history. It'd be more sort of extending that. And I think there's some really sort of interesting photographers at the minute, not just myself, but also photographers that are in Belfast at the minute, such as Brian Lincoln, who's a great photographer, and he takes photos of Easter Sunday and the 12th of July. So he really tries to get both sides of the coin in that sense, and not just focus on one thing. So I think in terms of photography, I think it's really important to capture different sides of it, not just a one-sided approach.
You've said there's a rise in photographers wanting to show both sides of the story.
Yeah, I think there is. I think it's quite sort of clear that as times are changing, more and more people want to sort of focus on both sides of the story, because I think that gives it a full rounded view of what's going on at the minute. And I think to focus on one side would sort of be ignorant of what's going on. It means that people, not just in Northern Ireland, but also in the UK and all over the world, can see that no matter what, the images are showing celebration, family, community. It's showing identity of the people, and it's doing that in a positive way. And I think that's really important in order to sort of move on.
What do you think photos of Northern Ireland so far, what do they say about our culture? Like, what would your first impression be?
I would say my first impression would be the culture is rich. In terms of historical value, I think there's a lot of photographers trying to be more playful in their image making. And by playful I mean sort of, through fashion photography. I think that's definitely something that I've seen recently. There's a lot of photographers doing that. Such as Macy Stewart, Jack Farrar, and even stylists who also work with photographers like Lucinda Graham. I think all these people are doing amazing things, and that's the first thing I think of when I think of Northern Irish photography.
And was there any photos that you've taken had like an impact on you personally?
Yeah, I think for me, like the most personal photographs would be sort of the ones of that I've taken of my dad. I think because my dad was raised Protestant, and taking photos of him, he had never been photographed before, and I took photos of him in my hometown, and I think those pictures are quite personal to me, and maybe give me a sense of that connection with my dad, and exploring his identity and what Northern Ireland means to him. I think those photos that I put in the first issue of Craic magazine were probably my favorite.
And you've also, I see your magazine has contributors from different backgrounds.
Yes, so just to sort of expand on that, the first issue of Craic magazine was done mainly through my eyes, and I kind of wanted to change that in the second issue, and I wanted to bring more people on board to give like a sort of a full rounded view. And I think having people from different backgrounds is so important because it gives different perspectives and it gives different stories.
And has the positive photos that you've taken, has that impacted you how you see this country?
Yeah, definitely. I think I always learn something every time I take a photo. I think how it impacts my view in the country. I would say it shows that there's so much like depth to image making in Northern Ireland. And I think, there was a photographer that I really like. She grew up in a housing estate in Belfast, and she took photos of it to show her connection with where she grew up, and then she like manipulated the photos afterwards and burnt them sort of as a way of you know connecting with her past. And I think that was such an interesting like perspective on dealing with upbringing and then showing that through images to showcase your identity in as a Northern Irish person.
And a lot of your photos are quite fun. How important is it to have all those fun photos as well as a lot of the serious ones?
I think I think to be honest, like a lot of people, in my opinion, connect more with when photos have an element of playfulness to them. I think I kind of like to have a bit of sort of tongue in cheek humor when I take photos, purely in it because it gets a reaction from people, and I think it makes them more memorable. And I think having that memory attached to a photo, say you think about a photo and you think, oh my god, I love that element. It makes you feel good about it. And I think that's sort of my thinking behind taking fun photos. I think serious photos are important too, but I think I don't want to have too many serious photos because then they start to lean into that negative element. And I don't want to have photos of, bonfires of people with guns and sort of like anything that's attached to paramilitary murals, that kind of thing. I think it's still important to remember that those things exist, but at the same time, I want to have a balance between the two.
What's next for your magazine?
So the next thing is I'm planning a second issue, which is really exciting. I've got some really exciting names that are involved in it, um, and it's going to be a collective of photographers and image makers, and I think it's going to be really exciting because it's taking it in a new direction, and it's going to show everyone that how good everyone is, from Northern Ireland, and that the photography scene is so rich and so visual. And I think that the future plan is to try and show as many people as possible in the UK, in Europe, and abroad as well. I think getting it stocked in shops and going to book fairs is also a big objective of mine, because I think that opens up those conversations with people, and shows people the work as well.
How important is it to open up the conversation?
I think it's really important. I think when I left Northern Ireland, 6 years ago, to move to Bristol for university, a lot of people, when they heard my accent, they said to me, "Oh, like, is Northern Ireland not a violent place?" They were asking me all these sort of strange questions. I know 6 years ago is quite a long time, but I think over the years I've been asked, about, how was it growing up in Northern Ireland, what was the violence like, all this kind of thing. So I think because people were asking me those questions, it makes me feel like that's still quite fresh in people's minds. And I feel like, the Troubles wasn't that long ago. So I think having new conversations about it and speaking to people and telling people all the amazing things that are going on back home, and showing people photos that I've taken and other people have taken, are so important to that conversation.
And is there anything else you would like to add?
I don't know. I just quite like to add that, there's some really amazing things going on in Northern Ireland at the minute, and I think everyone, like, whether you're an artist or a photographer or a writer or you're doing journalism, I think there's some really interesting perspectives coming out of the country at the minute, and I think for anyone who listens to this, just to keep on going. And if you're interested in doing anything for Craic magazine, give me a shout on Instagram.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Till next time, stay tuned and we'll talk later.